Your spoon carries a piece of dark, cinnamon-laced chocolate. You bring it to your mouth, and that burning, bitter taste spreads across your tongue, and you smile. You take a sip of coffee, that roasted, sharp bitterness burns your throat, and you knowingly take a second sip anyway. This doesn't quite make sense, because your body has been telling you one thing for millions of years. Bitter taste means it will kill you, and you ignore it. Every day, all over the world, billions of people silence their biological alarm and walk straight into the middle of it. So where does this contradiction come from? The answer is older and far darker than you'd think. The taste buds on your tongue aren't randomly scattered, insignificant little dots. They're an early warning system your ancestors used to survive. There are roughly 25 different gene families in the human genome called TAS2R, and the only job of these genes is to detect bitter taste. 25 different receptors. For comparison, the number of receptors that detect sweetness is just 2. Nature gave you 2 tools to tell a pear from a banana, but it gave you 25 to notice the plants trying to poison you. This ratio is no coincidence at all. For millions of years, plants have been developing chemical weapons so animals won't eat them. Alkaloids, glycosides, tannins, all of them bitter. And these chemicals are often genuinely toxic. They disrupt the nervous system, exhaust the liver, some can even be fatal. So when a plant tastes bitter to you, you're actually tasting the result of a war that's been going on for thousands of years. The chemical defense system that plant produced so you wouldn't eat it. And you find out whether you can get past that defense the moment you eat it. But this is where things start to get strange, because our perception of bitterness isn't something we're simply born with, like a door that's permanently shut. Give a newborn baby something bitter, and its face scrunches up, it spits, it cries. This is a universal reaction, the same in every corner of the world. But do the same thing to an adult, and some of them make a face while others ask for a second spoonful. What does this mean? It means that liking bitter taste is something learned. Culture and repetition reprogram, over time, an alarm system we were born with. Psychologist Paul Rosen studied this for years and gave it a strange name, benign masochism, meaning the brain takes pleasure in an experience the body is signaling as dangerous, precisely because it knows it's safe. Like riding a roller coaster. Eating a hot pepper is exactly this. Your mouth is burning, your brain is saying danger, but you know you're safe, and that knowledge turns fear into excitement. Now let's look at the secret of the hot pepper, because this is where biology tricks you. Capsaicin, the molecule that creates the burning sensation in hot peppers, doesn't actually talk to your taste buds at all. Capsaicin triggers a receptor called TRPV1, a heat and pain receptor, the very same system your body uses to sense temperature. This is why, when you eat a hot pepper, your brain genuinely thinks you're burning. This isn't a taste, it's a pain signal. You never actually taste the hot pepper, you feel it burning you. And here's the strange part. These plants evolved to produce capsaicin so that mammals wouldn't eat them, because the inside of a mammal's mouth has this receptor and feels the burn. But birds don't respond to capsaicin through this receptor at all. Birds can eat hot peppers without feeling a thing. And this isn't a coincidence, because the plant wants its seeds spread by birds, not chewed up and destroyed by mammals. So every time you eat a hot pepper, you're actually consuming, for pleasure, a weapon a plant specifically designed to drive you away. A victory this strange doesn't come around often. What about coffee? The bitterness of coffee tells a similar story. Caffeine is a natural pesticide plants produce to keep insects and fungi away. According to the legend from Ethiopia, a goat herder named Kaldi noticed his goats leaping around energetically all night after eating the berries of a certain shrub, and this is how one of humanity's greatest addictions supposedly began. But the truth is, the people who first chewed coffee beans probably didn't enjoy that bitterness at all. It was there, burning, harsh, off-putting. Even after people learned to roast, grind, and brew it, the bitterness remained. It was only the sharp, clear sense of alertness caffeine delivered that made the bitterness tolerable. Over time, our brains did something. They stopped associating bitterness with danger and started associating it with that burst of energy. This worked like a classic Pavlovian experiment, except this time, you're the subject. Once bitter taste became paired with reward, the brain slowly learned to suppress the danger signal. Now let's go a bit further back, because the darkest part of this story is hidden here. How did our ancient human ancestors distinguish the edible from the poisonous? They had no modern laboratories, no chemical analysis devices. The only tool they had was their own bodies. Anthropologists call this a trial and error strategy, but in reality it was a gamble, one where the stake was your life. When a group of people arrived in a new region and came across an unfamiliar plant, first a small piece would be smelled. Then it would be touched to the lip. If there was burning, numbness, or bitterness, the plant was usually discarded. If these initial tests seemed safe, a very small amount would be swallowed, and the body's reaction would be watched for hours. This process turned into a treasury of knowledge passed down from generation to generation. Which plant to gather in which season, which one loses its poison when cooked, which one must never be touched at all of it passed down through oral stories, songs, and taboos, generation after generation. Even today, in some indigenous communities, for instance, groups in the Amazon basin, the knowledge of how to process and detoxify plants like cassava root, which naturally contains cyanide, lives on as the distilled result of thousands of years of trial and error. One wrong step, one wrong ratio, meant death. And the people who carried this knowledge were mostly women, because foraging and plant knowledge was generally women's responsibility. At the origin of cuisine, there is in fact a laboratory, just staffed not by scientists in white coats, but by mothers and grandmothers trying to survive. But the most striking part is this. This dangerous process of trial and error didn't just keep us alive, it also shaped our cuisine. Because instead of eliminating bitterness altogether, humans learned to manage it. Cooking was the greatest invention of this management. Heat breaks down the toxic compounds in many plants, and at the same time reduces bitterness. Think of the sharp bitterness of raw eggplant, or how toxic certain roots are before they're cooked. Fire didn't just make food tastier, it made it safer. And over time, people became unable to tell these two things apart, safety and flavor. That deep, almost instinctive belief we hold today, that a meal should taste good, is actually the residue of a signal that was, thousands of years ago, matched with survival. The history of spices adds another strange layer to this story. For a long time, scientists claimed that spices were used in medieval Europe to mask the taste of spoiled meat, but this theory has largely been debunked, because spices back then were even more expensive than meat. Masking bad meat would have made no sense. The real reason runs deeper. Many spices naturally have antimicrobial properties. Garlic, cinnamon, cloves, cumin, all of them contain compounds that slow bacterial growth. Communities living in hot climates, where food spoiled faster, historically developed far spicier cuisines. This is no coincidence. Rosemary, mustard, ginger, all of these were partly culinary tradition and partly an invisible public health strategy. I'm not saying people planned this consciously, but the communities that survived across generations were the ones that used these spices, and their flavors gradually became part of the culture. Perhaps the most striking truth is this. Our sense of taste was never a fixed thing. It's a system in constant negotiation. On one side, the body's ancient alarm trying to protect you. On the other, the brain's capacity to learn and seek pleasure. A child tasting a hot pepper for the first time cries. Their face turns red. They ask for water. Years later, that same person enters competitions to find the hottest pepper in the world. An adult tasting coffee for the first time makes a face. 10 years later, they can't imagine their morning without that bitterness. This isn't a weakness. It's one of the most extraordinary capacities of the human brain, the ability to turn danger into pleasure. And we're the only species that can do this, because no animal knowingly drinks something bitter, knowingly eats something that burns, only seeking out that risk, that burn, as part of the experience on purpose. Next time you're holding a cup of coffee or a piece of bitter chocolate, think about this. That burning sensation in your mouth is the echo of the same fear your ancestors felt hundreds of thousands of years ago, trying to work out which plant would kill them and which would nourish them. Except now, you're no longer afraid. You turned that ancient alarm into a pleasure. And with every sip, every bite, you're actually tasting the inheritance of a survival struggle that's thousands of years old, except this time, there's no risk at all, just taste. Maybe that's the real history of cuisine, the story of domesticating danger, of sitting fear down at the table and setting a place for it.